Hey there, 8th graders. Welcome to today's Explainer. I am so incredibly excited to kick this off because today we're going on a bit of a mission. We are stepping out of our regular shoes and we're putting on our detective hats. That's right, we are officially becoming text detectives. By the end of this lesson, you're going to have the exact tools you need to decode absolutely any argument you encounter out there in the real world. You'll be able to see right through a text, understand exactly how it was built, and most importantly, who it was built for. But before we get into the heavy reading, think about this for a second. Do you talk to your absolute best friend the exact same way you talk to the principal? Well, of course not. If you're hanging out with your best friend, you're probably using slang, inside jokes, and speaking pretty casually, right? But the second you step into the principal's office, your posture changes, your vocabulary gets a little more formal, and your tone is super respectful. We naturally change how we communicate depending on who is actually listening to us. And guess what? That is exactly what professional writers do too. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the big idea, decode the audience, uncover the purpose, look at some real-world examples, and finally, wrap it all up with a godly learner's mindset. All right, part 1, the big idea, who and why. If you're taking notes right now, and hey, you definitely should be, this is the first major thing you need to write down. Every single piece of writing, whether it's an argument, an article, or a speech, is built on 2 foundational pillars: the intended audience, which is the who, and the purpose, which is the why. You literally cannot fully understand an argument until you understand who the author is talking to and why they bothered to sit down and write it in the first place. The who and the why shape the whole shebang. And you know, tweaking a message for a specific audience isn't just some modern trick invented by marketers. It's actually a deeply biblical, super effective way to communicate. Take a look at this verse from 1 Corinthians 9:22. The Apostle Paul says, "I have become all things to all people, so that by all possible means I might save some." Paul was an absolute master at tailoring his approach. When he spoke to Jewish audiences, he referenced Old Testament laws. When he spoke to Greek philosophers, he referenced their own poets. He never changed the truth of the gospel, but he expertly changed his presentation so that his specific audience could actually understand and receive it. Moving right along to section 2, decoding the audience. So what exactly is an intended audience? Well, put simply, it's the specific person or group of people a message is designed for. It is absolutely crucial to understand this, because knowing the intended audience completely unlocks your understanding of the tone, the examples, and the style a writer chooses to use. Let's sharpen those detective skills. When you're staring at a piece of text, you've got to hunt for clues to figure out who the author is actually targeting. Look closely at the language. Does it seem aimed at a certain age group? What specific interests are being discussed? And what about background knowledge? I mean, if an author uses a bunch of highly technical scientific terms without stopping to explain them, boom, their intended audience is probably a group of scientists. Remember, a formal speech delivered to lawmakers passing a bill is going to sound completely different from a casual blog post written for teens. Which brings us to section 3, uncovering the purpose. Once you've figured out the who, you need to find the why. Purpose is just the reason the text was written in the first place. Usually, an author wants to persuade you, inform you, or maybe do a little bit of both. Being able to spot the purpose makes you a highly aware reader. You aren't just absorbing words anymore. You can actually detect when a text is actively trying to influence you. It's like suddenly being able to see the strings behind the puppet. Now, what's genuinely fascinating about this is how these goals completely dictate the author's game plan. When you're analyzing a text, ask yourself, is this author trying to change my opinion on a controversial topic? Are they trying to inspire action, like getting me to buy a new product or vote for a candidate? Or are they simply trying to share information, like a textbook explaining the water cycle? Identifying whether an author wants to actively change your mind or just hand you cold, hard facts completely changes how you interact with that text. All right, section 4, real-world examples. Let's put this theory into practice. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how audience changes everything. Picture 2 different texts about starting a recycling program. If the text is aimed at a teen audience, like you guys, the author might throw in some modern slang, use really simple, relatable examples, and focus on school-based solutions, like putting more bins in the cafeteria. But if a policy brief on that exact same recycling topic is written for a professional audience of city planners, it's going to look radically different. That text will use highly formal language, complex statistics, and references to urban design and waste management infrastructure. It's the exact same topic, but a totally different audience means a totally different text. Now let's flip it and look at how purpose shifts things. Let's say the topic is healthy eating. If the author's purpose is simply to inform, you might read a basic nutritional guide. It'll be neutral, just listing out vitamins, calories, and biological facts. But if the author's purpose shifts to persuade, you might read an intense opinion article arguing why you need to completely overhaul your diet today, or else you'll turn into a giant French fry. The topic is exactly the same, but the purpose completely reshapes the energy and tone of the writing. Okay, pop quiz time. Don't worry, it's just for practice. Let's do a little homework prep right here in class. Think about this. Who is the intended audience for a campaign ad promoting school funding? I'll give you a second to mentally calculate the who. All right, if you guessed parents of students, local taxpayers, or registered voters in a specific town, you nailed it. The ad isn't targeting people halfway across the world, and it certainly isn't targeting toddlers. It's perfectly tailored for the specific locals who actually have the power to vote or donate. And here's the follow-up question. What is the purpose of that exact same ad? Think about the why. The purpose is clearly to persuade. The author wants to inspire action. They want those parents and taxpayers to get out there and vote yes on a ballot measure or donate money to the funding campaign. They aren't just sharing fun facts about the school. They have a distinct goal to influence your behavior. Finally, Section 5, a godly learner's mindset. Because at the end of the day, we aren't just learning academic skills in a vacuum here. I want you to read this powerful scripture with me. Romans 8:6-7 says, "For to be carnally minded is death, but to be spiritually minded is life and peace." Keeping our minds centered on the Spirit leads to life. This isn't just a nice-sounding thought, it is the absolute core of how we approach learning here at HeroesMart Academy. At HeroesMart Academy, we weave biblical morality directly into our education for one massive reason. Education without morality can actually cause harm. Think about it. If you simply get smarter, if you just become a brilliant text detective who can manipulate words, but you totally lack spiritual discernment and biblical morality, that knowledge might lead you down a very selfish or destructive path. Knowledge makes you capable for sure, but morality makes you wise. So, the crucial takeaway here is that your goal as a godly learner is to merge the two together. We absolutely want you to pursue academic excellence. We want you to be the smartest, most capable readers who can easily spot an author's audience and purpose from a mile away. But we want you to use that intelligence while keeping your mind centered on God. Seek truth and wisdom so that when you see exactly how a media text is trying to persuade you, you have the strong moral compass to make righteous, God-honoring choices about what you consume, what you believe, and how you let it affect you. I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought for your homework today. I want you to answer this question. Explain how knowing the audience changes the way you interpret a text and, by extension, the whole world around you. I want to challenge you to take these brand new detective skills out of this classroom. Look at the ads on your phone, read the articles popping up in your feed, and navigate the media with the wisdom, truth, and sharp discernment of a true godly learner. Have an amazing day, class, and I will see you next time for our next explainer.